quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Hey, it's another exciting edition of the business side of music. And I'm going to say an exciting edition because our old buddy and patron of the show, Larry Butler's back in the studio. Larry, welcome back.
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here, Jason, in your brand new studio digs.
Yeah, here in Donaldson, Tennessee, instead of Franklin. But hey, we got to make things work. Not only is Larry a musicologist, maybe we should say, or a music expert, been doing this for a long time.
I think you could say that.
Yeah. He's also the author of the new singer-songwriter rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success, which, by the way, we're going to give away a copy to one lucky listener of the show. But we're just going to kind of catch up here and have a conversation today. Things, boy, in this business, wow.
Is there a business?
Thank you. What are we doing anymore? I mean, no more live shows. What are we doing? What's our next step? What are artists doing these days? I mean, help?
Let's look at the big picture. There's a book by a Lebanese philosopher called The Black Swan. His name is Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He portends that the major things that happen in your life that are really significant, that change everything, come out of nowhere. You cannot see them coming. You don't see them coming. And when they do show up, it's like seeing a black swan because there's no such thing. Of course there is. They live in Australia. But everywhere else, all swans are white. And yet, out of the blue, the whole bird industry had to turn on a dime a couple hundred years ago when they discovered there were actually black swans somewhere. And that's his point. Things like, what's your occupation today? How did you meet your spouse? How did you hurt your knee? Just things you did not see coming that have changed your life. This virus qualifies as a black swan. No one saw this coming. Taleb's thing is, when a black swan event occurs, don't run, don't turn away, don't ignore it, don't fight it. Evaluate it and decide, how can I take advantage of this? How can I improve my life? How can I make money anyway in some regard and not just go bury your head in the sand and check out? He said that's not smart because your life's on the line.
And that's what it's all about right now, because we're not touring, we're not performing live, we're not necessarily selling music. So we almost have to reinvent ourselves, or at least recreate what it is that we're doing if we want to stay viable within the business. We were talking before the show. I see a lot of artists going on Facebook Live and doing an acoustic performance, and they'll do it in their garage, or they'll do it in their basement or their living room or wherever. As much as I appreciate it, to me, it's the same old, and it keeps my attention for maybe a song or two, or if they're really lucky, 3, because it's not a performance. They're not doing anything that's engaging. And this is the most opportune time to work on that.
Bingo. Thank you, Bob. That's exactly right. And that's what I'm working with my clients on, is actually the live stream stuff that they're doing, because that spills over into a live performance. What I work with my clients is making your boring live performance entertaining. That's the bottom line of what I teach and what I do and what my book is about and why I'm here in Nashville. Is singer-songwriters, you're boring. Let's be entertaining. Bad enough to be entertaining in a bar with a bunch, 100 people there.
But they're all drunk. So.
They're all drunk, so it doesn't matter. But now you're trying to be entertaining to an iPhone with no response, and it's more difficult. And you have to overcome that. And again, you have to remember that when you're doing live streams, just like when you're doing live, it's a visual medium. people can see you. They can see what's behind you. They can see what you're wearing. They can see your hair. They can see your guitar. They can't see your name anywhere because you've neglected to post your name anywhere on the stage or on the camera. There's lesson number 1 of something people could do in their live stream. I got about 4 or 5 things I can tell you every live stream is doing wrong.
Let's talk about live streams for a minute.
Sure.
Do you think a live stream works better than, say, a recorded piece that you videotape and edit and master and mix and post, and then you set a time? Or are you okay doing that Facebook Live and just kind of throwing it out there to the wind and hoping that it passes?
My advice is to record it and then do it again and then do it and record it and then show it to me and I'll tell you what you did wrong and let's do it over again. You need to record it. You need to open out of town. You need to rehearse because this is a whole different ball game than appearing in a bar or appearing live anywhere. And you need to do that. And I even suggest that many times run this instead of a live just to see and get some feedback from somebody else other than me. But let's at least get to the point where I think it's pretty good. Doing it live is a whole different ballgame because there's not a lot, but there's a certain amount of tech involved. There's a certain amount of downtime between songs where people can still see you, and yet you're tuning or you're drinking water or you're pushing a button or you've forgotten what your next song is. And it's like you need to rehearse that and get over that so it's smooth and seamless. When you say, oh, I'm bored after 2 songs, that's because after 2 songs, they seem to have lost the thread. And so as a result, so have you.
When I go see an artist, whether it's The Who or it's Jason Aldean or whoever it is, they just don't decide to go out on the road and tour and say, hey guys, here's the list of songs, rehearse them. They actually go in to a soundstage and not only rehearse the songs, the material, but they're also working out the choreography, the moves. This is where I need to stand so the light hits me here, or I'm going to make sure I'm up on the drum riser with the drummer, whatever. It's all planned and coordinated. And to me, I don't care if you're a solo artist in your living room, do something substantial like that other than set yourself on fire, which if all else fails, that might work. I don't know. But you have to do something to keep me engaged, which means you have to be engaged.
It's part of the 5 things I mentioned. And actually, this is just a spillover from what I teach people when they're on stage. The number 1 thing is you need to somehow post your name in a stationary place where people can see it for a length of time, because you can say your name 100 times and it might be on the title card as you open up and as you close, but more often than not, the next day they will have forgotten who, unless they already know you, but you will have forgotten who they are. The only way you're going to remember their name, your name, is for you to somehow paste it on a banner behind you.
Not only having your name, but maybe some way to find you, website or an or whatever, right? The hashtags.
I recommend, in the live performance, I recommend these 6-foot roll-up banner things that come on stands, and it has like your picture and your name and your website. They're collapsible, and they cost $100 or something. They're online. It can say anything, and you got your sponsors, and you got your social media, and all that kind of stuff. And then you set it up to the side of the stage, not directly next to you, but maybe a couple feet away, and it sits there, and everyone can see it. And that way, all that stuff gets into their mind's eye. They actually inadvertently memorize it. And they have this picture of what your name is and who you look like and how they get in touch with you.
Do you suggest maybe a unique environment, maybe outside of the living room or the basement or the garage? No, really? Tell me how you really feel. I mean, should they do it out in a field somewhere, or what is, in your mind, what's that ideal location for them?
One of the 5 things that I tell my artists is the fact that you do not want to provide any visual distractions to the audience. The audience needs to see 3 things: your eyes, your mouth, and your hands, period. Because that's how you communicate your songs and what you're saying, and it's all done with those 3 items. If they can't see your mouth, by the way, and that's one of the 5, is get your mouth out of the microphone and take off the shades and make sure that you got the shot of the camera can actually see you playing the guitar, piano, or whatever. Don't hide your hands from the audience. What you don't want to show them is your pink boots and your plaid pants and your orange guitar and your yellow amp and pictures of beer beer manufacturers behind you, or your mom, or whatever it happens to be, because that's going to draw their attention away, like, what the heck is that type of thing? Yeah. So you need to divorce all that stuff out. Then replace it with things that might be conducive, congenial, relative to who you are as an artist. But make sure it's fairly innocuous and yet artistic and work together type of thing. I don't like white walls, and I don't like busy walls. There must be someplace in between. That's the number one thing I point out to anyone in the live cast is turn around and take a look at what people are looking at.
You know, kind of like what we do with the podcast
Yes.
with our banner. It's just one big, gigantic microphone.
It's great.
And it's a subtle message, and you know it's there, but it doesn't become a distraction.
You see it once, you get it what it is, and you don't have to stare at it the whole time wondering what the heck it is.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, the other thing is, whatever it is you do have behind you, make sure people can make out what it is, so they can actually say, oh, okay, for instance, I'm looking at something from Germany behind you, and it says Germany, and I can read that, and so now I don't have to look at it anymore. But if I had to squint and worry about it...
But for a second, you were distracted.
As soon as we sat down.
Yeah. Spending that money to create a banner or a backdrop, it's a wise investment. And it's something you can take with you that once you do go and perform.
You can go to FedEx or whatever and get a roll-up plastic banner that just has your name in like 12-inch letters. And it rolls up, and you can actually take pins into your drywall. And the same thing with your website or your social or whatever it is you want, and just put it up behind you. It works in a bar, too.
You want to really create an environment when you're doing this to this captive audience, I guess what we'd call them, that it really does go beyond that bar scene.
Of course.
Because you're not entertaining the partiers and the drunks that are there. And the other thing is let me ask you this. Original music versus cover tunes, a blend of both? What?
Blend.
Okay.
A blend for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, no one wants to hear you more than a half an hour.
Good point.
Half an hour is 20 minutes is better, but if you have to do a half an hour, do a half an hour. That is the cutoff point for virtually 90% of the populace. Unless you're Paul McCartney and you've got 2 hours to kill and play your hits. But if you're only barely known or unknown or even slightly known, you're going to get 5 or 6 songs in, because you also need to talk to your audience. You need to convey to them the emotion behind the song, your reason for playing the song, something more than Bob and I wrote it in my truck on the way to Florida. You know, something about the song itself. You don't have to explain the song, but you need to set up every song, because you don't know your songs. And you need to start with an up-tempo song, you need to end with an up-tempo song. Always on an up note, starting and ending. What you do in the middle is kind of up to you. I'm a fan of at least one ballad. I don't like mid-tempo songs because they're boring, there's no rhythm, there's no action. The only mid-tempo song you should be doing is a cover, because everybody knows the song, and you can encourage people to sing along or whatever. But with up-tempo songs, then you also have to move. You got to get your shoulders in the rhythm, and you got to nod your head, and you have to show some body language that there is a beat, there's a rhythm, and you feel it inside, so that it conveys that to the audience who's watching you. If you're singing this really wild rock and roll song and you are motionless, it doesn't work. You have not conveyed the emotion of the song or what it is you're trying to do.
And you've lost me after one song.
Bingo.
Yeah. We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to chat, I guess, about the other 3 or 4 items of the 5 topics of conversation here, along with some other exciting things, because when Larry Butler and I get together, it's never boring. Just ask my wife.
Hi, this is Bill Sinke. You've probably never heard of me, but you've heard of the business side of music. Good thing. Listen on.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hey, it's Chris SD from Sync Songwriter. Imagine what it would be like getting your music into the latest TV shows, movies, or ads. Your songs would not only get exposure in front of millions of viewers, you'd get paid to do it, and gain a reputation as the songwriter that you are. I've been showing songwriters, composers, and artists how to get their music into TV and film for over 15 years. Collectively, they have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars from licensing their music. Their music has been on networks such as HBO, Bravo, ABC, NBC, Netflix, and more. In films or trailers such as Predator, Annihilation, Christmas Chronicles, Professor Mac, and many others. So many songwriters upload their music to websites hoping to get discovered. Unfortunately, this almost never happens with the millions of songs out there competing for attention. I show you how to get your music heard by the people who can actually make it happen for you. When you start getting your music licensed, you automatically develop a reputation in the industry. This lets you get syncs over and over again. If you'd like to discover how to connect with the right people in music licensing, just click the Sync Songwriter logo on the Business Side of Music webpage, and I'll see you there.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, musical entrepreneur. I like using big words with you. It's fun.
And French, too.
Not going there. Larry Butler, the author of the new Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. But anyway, we're going to be giving the book away. We talked briefly about the 5 things. You talk about getting your name out there, no distractions, not eating the microphone. That always seems to be mic technique. What an unusual concept.
Thanks for that setup. I am on a crusade to get people to stop eating the microphone. When I was playing in bands, literally years ago, it was really difficult to find a good PA. Even if you carried your own around, you couldn't. And difficult to hear yourself because more often than not, you didn't have monitors. And if you did, they fed back. And so as a result, you end up sticking your mouth into the microphone in order to be heard, in order to prevent the feedback and that type of thing. Those days are over. This is 2020. The PA systems you're going to find around, whether you own one or you find one of our, when was the last time you heard feedback at a bar? I haven't. No, it just doesn't happen anymore. That was the whole reason for eating the microphone. You need to get your mouth away from the microphone because your mouth is one of the 3 ways you communicate with an audience. If you spend your entire evening and your live cast with your hidden behind the microphone, it's like going to dinner with somebody and they wear a mask.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's like wearing a mask. There's the. I think we all know the downsides of wearing masks. Now, maybe I'm going to use that as my example. What I get from artists is the fact, well, I sound so good when I get close to the mic. I say, okay, first of all, this is not a recording. This is a live performance, whole different ball game. 2, you're hearing yourself in the really nicely, finely tuned monitors at your feet. Your audience doesn't have monitors. They're not hearing what you're hearing. Give up on that. What you need to do is to visually communicate with your audience. The tone of your vocal is immaterial and non-existent.
You're there also to not entertain yourself. You're there to entertain your audience.
Oh, you went there.
Well, I had to. I tried.
That's where I separate the amateurs from the professionals.
Yeah.
Amateurs entertain themselves. Professionals entertain their audience.
And that really is the separation of so many artists.
Yes.
And forget about what Quincy Jones famously said, check your ego at the door.
Bingo.
You're there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to entertain whoever is sitting in that audience or whoever's watching it from their iPad or their cell phone or whatever it is. Your job is to entertain them. And if you can't do that, guess what? There's probably 50,000, if not 100,000 artists out there all doing FaceTime right now, begging for you to watch them, begging you to listen to their music, for that sole purpose of they hope eventually that you'll become a fan and buy their music. If you're there just because you know you sound great and you look fabulous and I love me, you're going to lose quite a few people right off the bat.
That's the big picture for sure.
Yeah.
I want to get back to the mic for a second. The best microphone you can get right now, because what you want to do is put the microphone, if you're on a boom stand, this is really radical. Turn it over so that the mic is coming at your chin from a 45-degree angle.
From underneath.
From underneath. And you've removed that entire mic stand boom apparatus from your face. And so now it's down at your throat. Fine. No one's looking at your throat. Or maybe they are, but that's a little too weird. And you want to put it at a 45-degree angle to your chin. Your mouth should never come near or touch that microphone. The best mic for this, an inexpensive one, is a Shure Beta 58A. It's just like a 58, but it has a whole different configuration where there's no feedback, and you can sing. Bob can see me now. I'm moving around his microphone visually. You can now, if you pull away from the mic and above it, you can now look to the left and sing. You can look to the right and sing. You are now equidistant from the sound and the configuration of the microphone. If indeed you eat the mic and then you pull away to look at the audience, all of a sudden it goes up and down in volume. That's bad mic technique.
And that's something else, too, that you need to not only do on stage in a live performance, but I think you should also carry over if you're doing a Facebook Live, and that is eye-to-eye attention. If you can't see the audience, that's okay. Fake it.
Bingo.
Because live on stage, don't stare at one person the whole time or stare off into the spotlight. Find different marks throughout the evening, what I call pivot points or stars, and sing to those different people. You'll make a connection that will last a long time.
And that's live. However, when you're stuck looking at an iPhone, look at the iPhone. Now, you can close your eyes on particularly moving passages. You could look up to the right, which shows that you're looking into the creative space of your brain for inspiration on how you're going to sing the next line. Don't look up to the left, because that means you've forgotten the lyric or the chord, and you're looking for that in the left side of your brain, and that's not what the audience needs to see. They need to see you go off into creativity. But more often than not, particularly on the choruses, you need to look directly into that camera as if you're playing to one person.
Right. You need to be able to connect.
Yes.
With what's going on here in this crazy world, especially the music business, which is shut down. I mean, that's just really what it has done.
Yep.
You really should spend some time rehearsing and honing your craft. And you talked about recording yourself and getting in front of such as yourself. And there's other people that should look at this. And maybe that shouldn't be your mom who's going to tell you, little Johnny or little Susie, you look great. This is fabulous. You need to find some peers within the business who will provide honest to goodness constructive criticism, because that's what you need.
I say, do not listen to your family, friends, or fans. They have an emotional connection to you that the general public doesn't. And so they cannot be reflective of what it is you're doing. Your mom is going to love everything you do, and your dad's going to keep telling you, what the hell are you doing that for? What are you in this business for? Who are those people you're hanging out with? They smoke dope, don't they?
Yeah.
That's your dad. And your mom is, that's the most wonderful thing I've ever heard. We've got to get it to Miranda Lambert somehow. That crap. But you do need constructive. Most people, because they know nothing about performing, they've never been on stage, they've never written a song, and they'll say, I don't know, I don't like it. That's because they don't know, and they don't like it, but they can't tell you why. You need to be working with somebody who does know why they don't like it and how you can make it better.
Who are those people? Who is that person?
Well, that's me, for one. There's live performance coaches around, not as many as there are guitar teachers and vocal coaches and dance instructors, but here in particularly Nashville, there's live performance coaches. You want to be looking for somebody who's actually been on stage for a number of years and learned how to entertain a crowd on their own, preferably.
Or in your case, has put on enough shows, produced enough shows that you know what works and what doesn't work.
I played in bands for 10 years. I was a tour manager for 5 years, and I ran the touring department for Warner Brothers Records for 20 years. I've seen it all.
And you know what works. And really, it's not changed that much. A live performance is still a live performance.
The major things that have changed in the music business is how it's recorded, how it's manufactured, how it's distributed, how it's consumed, how it's available to the consumer, if at all. Those things have changed. The one thing that hasn't changed is live performance. Everything that worked in the 60s is still working on stage. In fact, if you look closely, you'll find that guitar players are still playing Strats, and that there's Fender Rhodes, and there's all the trappings of the 60s are still on stage. And
or back on stage. And that includes how you entertain an audience is timeless, and that hasn't changed. And it's still, you can write a song in a weekend, you can make an album in a weekend, you can do a video in a weekend. You cannot get your stage legs together in a weekend. You can be taught, but you aren't going to be able to do it.
It's going to be like everything else you've ever done in your life.
With confidence.
With confidence.
That's the big thing.
I always liken it to, I'll say, why don't you try this, whatever it is? And the person I'm talking to says, oh, I don't know, it seems dumb and I can't do it. And it's still, and I said, well, how was that first time you played guitar? Were you pretty good? That first time you picked up the guitar and tried it, you're pretty good? You knew what you were doing? You're ready to go on stage? No. So what I'm teaching you to do right now is something you're going to have to do over and over and over until not only you can't get to the point where you don't get it right. You got to get to the point where you don't get it wrong, where you do it every time, and that's going to take months.
I saw The Who a few years ago. Roger Daltrey,
Fabulous.
Pete Townsend, the band. They were celebrating their 50th anniversary on the road, and every single song they did, of course, was a hit. Imagine how many hundreds of times they've done it.
If not thousands.
And they pulled it off like it was the first time in front of a large audience. The energy level was so high. They drew you in and they kept you there.
They were performing. They were acting. Now, it's gotten to the point where it's no longer acting because they have it they can get up out of a dead sleep and probably get on stage. And it would appear it's the first time they've ever played that song. A lot of artists I work with say, I want to be authentic on stage. And I take a quote from Father John Misty, whose real name is Jason something, I'm not really sure. He says, and when you think about it, it's true. No one can be or should be their authentic selves on stage because their authentic selves is boring. And so anybody who appears on stage is an entertaining version of their authentic selves. They're on. He said, I find that to be phony. That I am not being my authentic self on stage. I'm being a phony version of Jason, whatever his name is. He said, so I've taken on the caricature and the persona of Father John Misty. So when I appear on stage, I am the authentic version of Father John Misty. I am the only authentic performer out there.
I remember years ago, Don Williams, back in the 80s, big artist, big star, had a lot of hits going at the time.
Oh, lonesome me.
I remember talking to the promoter. I was running a T-shirt concert security company at the time. And I asked him, I said, how many guys do you need tonight? I think we'd just done a George Strait show or something like that. And we probably had, 20, 30 T-shirt security guys. I said, how many do you need for the show? And he goes, need 3. He said, I need 1 on the bus, 1 at the dressing room, and 1 on the side of the stage. And I said, seriously? And he goes, no, trust me. Don's show is so boring. And I was like, wow. And basically he got out there and, sat and strummed the guitar and sang. But I mean, people loved it, but people expect more now. They expect you can't be that Don Williams, and God bless him. I loved his music, but you can't get up there and just sing. You've got to entertain, and we keep hounding on that, but a lot of people just don't seem to get it.
There's so much to talk about in that respect. One is the fact that as a musician or a performer, whatever, in your career, there are many people who will work on various facets of your career. You have a guitar teacher, a vocal coach, a dance coach, a music producer, an engineer, you have an agent, and you have a lawyer, and you have an accountant, and you have a manager, and you have everybody, and social media person, and you have everybody doing their gig. You do not have anyone working with you on your live show. And if you don't have a live show, you don't have a career. You might have a hit record, but you don't have a career, because people are going to not come back and see you. That's number one. So go ahead and write your songs and go ahead and record them, but you better simultaneously be working on your live show, because again, as I mentioned before, your live show is going to take months to mature to get to the point where people are going to find it entertaining. So don't make it the last thing on your list. It's got to be up there with the first couple of ones.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for another sponsor. In the studio with us today here in Nashville, Tennessee, Larry Butler, the author of the new singer-songwriter rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success, along with being an all-around nice guy, and he can really help you with your career when it comes to a live performance.
Hey, this is Ray Miko, and I'm sitting here with my pal Bob Bender, sharing my expertise and wisdom here on the business side of music. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site. Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Larry Butler sitting across the console from me here in Nashville, Tennessee, the author of the new singer-songwriter rulebook, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success. When you walked in, you set down a box of books. Some of these, of course, are yours that we're going to be giving one away to one lucky listener, and we'll put that in our show notes so you can figure out how to do it. Your book, and we talked about this during the break, was you said you sent this off to an artist manager?
Yes.
Who came back and said, well, there's nothing in here about social media. We're not going to beat up on social media, but one of the things that Tom and I have discovered, and we actually have an intern now who does nothing but social media for us. That's all she does. What we have found is the algorithms, those little ones and zeros, are changing like 400 times a year. How do you stay up on top of that? And what works and what doesn't work? And Facebook will send me a little thing that'll say, hey, you know, with this post that you just put on Facebook for an additional $85, you can reach up to 3,000 additional people. Yeah, whether that works or it doesn't, you made $85 and God bless you. But, we don't know what works from social marketing and everybody is trying to figure it out. That's not what we're talking about here today. What we're talking about is how to improve your chance of success, especially from that live performance standpoint. You go in the studio, you spend a ton of money recording a good song or an album, you shoot that music video, and hopefully you've shot a music video that is what we've talked about all along. It's engaging, it captures you, it motivates you, it sustains you, but it's that live performance. How do you come about all this? Because like I said, you've laid a bunch of books here on the console. Where does your motivation come from? Let me start there.
My motivation comes from, I'm a lifelong fan of live performance and a lifelong purveyor of it and a participant in it. And I've really done nothing else. And to be honest, it's the only thing I know how to do. It's the only thing I can speak on with some confidence and competency. And I consider it to be the centerpiece of any musical career that wants to be a career that can get by. Yes, there are exceptions, and I have met them. When I was at Warner's, I did a whole promotional tour with Enya. Enya has never performed live.
Never.
Well, once. I got her to do a stint on Good Morning America with a string quartet, and it was kinda to track, kinda. She's perfectly capable of it, but she said it takes a 125-piece orchestra and choir to duplicate my record, so I'm not going to do that.
And she doesn't need to.
She doesn't need to, and there are those who don't need to. And the other distinction I want to meant to do it earlier, is that if you are an unknown singer-songwriter and you're on stage, don't look at the superstars of the industry and emulate what they're doing. Their music has been played on the radio and is engaged in everybody's head, and they've come to hear their favorite songs performed. They really don't care if you jump around or not. They just want to hear you sing their favorite song. The people who have come to see you or happen to be in the place where you happen to be performing have not come to see you. They do not know your songs. They don't know who you are. You need to have that extra bit of entertainment and emotional connection and stories and professionalism about what you're doing, because you're on a blind date. You haven't been married to him for 20 years.
That's a perfect example.
If you've been married to him 20 years, you can go to dinner and you can, spill your food and you can do anything you want. And your 20-year-old spouse is not going to care because they're used to it and they're just enjoying having dinner. If you're on a blind date, you don't spill your food or lose your language or yell at the waiter or whatever because you're trying to make a good impression. You, as an unknown singer-songwriter, need to make a good impression as if you're on your first date.
I love that analogy. And that part of it has not changed ever.
No, ever.
From day one.
Ever. At some point, when people get to know your songs, you can present them in another way. One thing you can't do, I'll go back to this. One thing you can't do or it's difficult to do in these live streams is move around. I'm a big fan on stage of moving around. Do not sit or stand in one place for all 6 songs. You have to be someplace else, change instruments, stand up, sing something a cappella. You can do all those things. Don't just keep strumming the same guitar in the same key with the same capo and doing 6 mid-tempo songs.
But that's a live performance. That's
not live too, but really with the live stream, you still can vary it up. You can change it up, switch to electric, play a kalimba. There's all kinds of things.
But be prepared when you do it, so there's not all this dead time in between. Yeah.
Have somebody nearby who can hand you the guitar or something. Don't you have any friends?
Yeah. Well, if not, ask your neighbor.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Somebody who trusts you.
What else we got there on the table?
Something to do while you're sequestered, in addition to working on your live show, which you could do all by yourself with your iPhone and record yourself. Read. It's time to read up things you're not doing, I'm fairly certain, is read up on the music business, on songwriting and performing. And I have 4 or 5 favorite books here I want to recommend. The first is The Bible of the Music Industry. It's All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Don Passman. Don's an attorney in L.A. I have Don's book on my desk, and he has mine on his. He's an old friend. I have in my hand, Bob can see it, it's the 9th edition. Don's just put out the 10th edition. I highly recommend it. There's things in the 10th edition you don't know, or you think you know, or you thought you knew, and things have changed, and you didn't know that. Don does. So I recommend the 10th edition of Don. That should keep you busy all summer, actually.
That's a big read.
It's a big read.
Yeah.
But it's not written in, even though he's an attorney, it's not written in legalese. It's all real straightforward. And Don has a really good section on publishing, which actually he admits that he had a friend of his, a publisher, actually write most of it because publishing is such a specialized and arcane and Byzantine and difficult path to hoe.
You and I have actually both talked about we should do an episode on publishing, but we need to find someone.
You need to find somebody who can actually tell us. Well,
get us through those waters.
Here I'm going to recommend something. This is I've read pretty much every publishing book you can think of, and some are really thick, and you would think they'd be full of information. No, this is the one. It's called The Plain and Simple Guide to Music Publishing. It's by a guy named Randall Wixen, Wixen. He's an independent publisher in Los Angeles. The foreword to the book is written by his current and actually former client, Tom Petty. In it, Tom says, Randall's the guy. He said, you got to have somebody who's looking out for you in publishing. This is the plain and simple guide. It's written that way. You read this book, you're going to know more than 90% of the people in the music business about publishing. I highly recommend that. Okay, I'm going to get ethereal now. I'm going to go off the deep end. There are 2 books I recommend that have to do with what is preventing you from creating. Where's this writer's block? What is stopping you from being a better performer? Why is it you can't seem to get out of bed in the morning? Why can't you write out a script and follow it? What is keeping you from doing that? It's your ego. And there's 2 books about this. The best one is called A New Earth. It's by the German pseudo-philosopher Eckhart Tolle, who also wrote A Power of Now. This is the follow-up to Power of Now, which says the ego runs your life, and it's ignorant. It's unconscious. But if you didn't have an ego, you wouldn't get up in the morning and eat. You wouldn't remember to do that. But the ego doesn't like is the other side of your brain, which is the creative side. If the creative side is in action, if you're actually creating something and doing something and focused on that, the ego doesn't like that. So the ego does everything it can to make sure that you aren't creative. And you need to be aware of that. You need to address that. You can't get rid of the ego, but you need to put it to sleep somehow. And A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle talks about that. A follow-up, and I don't have the book here because I lent it to somebody and they aren't giving it back, is a book called The War of Art. And it's by a guy named, screenwriter named Stephen Pressfield. And it's about, again, he calls it the resistance. He doesn't call it the ego. He calls it the resistance, that there is something in your brain that's stopping you from, it's telling you you're not talented, that what you've done is no good, and you're not worthy, and you're not smart enough. It just keeps pushing you back and pushing you down and making you doubt your own talent. The alternative to that, and he points this out, is the person who's overconfident. The person who believes that they got it made, they know what they're doing. No, they don't. they're never going to create anything. You have to have some doubt, but you have to overcome that doubt. And the way to do it is to be aware that there's something inside your head that's stopping you from doing it.
It's a balance.
It's a balance, and too many people don't have that. Of course, we've recommended my book.
Yes, and then we have your book.
It's a 34th version, actually.
But it's actually a very good read.
I update it all the time. It's got the new copyright figures. It has everything that's current. I've taken things out that don't exist anymore and added stuff that does. Because it's on Amazon and Kindle and on-demand print, I can update this thing anytime. I can change all little things. I can find typos and correct them. I can put a new graphic on the cover. I've done that already, and of course I recommend that. In fact, it's required reading for any of my clients. Before I can work with you, you have to have read my book.
Speaking of clients, how can someone who wants to really develop and take their career to the next level, how can they find you?
The best way is through my website, which is Did It Music. 3 words, Did It Music, DIDITMUSIC, diditmusic.com. Everything's there, including my contact information, my email, and that kind of stuff. I got one more book I want to talk about. It's about songwriting. There are hundreds of books on songwriting. I've read, not 100, but I've read a lot of them. Having played in bands for 10 years, I know something about how songs work. A friend of mine gave me this one. It's by Jimmy Webb. Jimmy Webb wrote all the big orchestral hits of the last century, Up and Away, By the Time I Get to Phoenix.
If Glenn Campbell recorded it, Jimmy Webb wrote it.
MacArthur Park, all the big stuff. Jimmy Webb is quite the quintessential musician and songwriter, and he wrote a book in the mid-90s called Tunesmith. And it is the best book on songwriting and being a songwriter and what it means to be a songwriter, successful or not. There's huge sections about rhyming and about melody and about chord progressions and how they all have to work together and meld together and how you can learn how to do that. It's like a college-level course.
And you can still get the book?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I don't know. This was given to me by a friend. But it's Tunesmith by Jimmy Webb. I have to believe it's still in print.
Yeah.
Those are my books. Oh, how about some websites you should be looking at?
Absolutely.
Let's go there. There's a whole bunch of websites and email blasts and the thing that, again, more reading that have to do with the music business. And you could be doing instead of watching Jeopardy or whatever it is you're doing.
Watering your plant. Or...
You can do it while you're watering plants for all I care. In alphabetical order, there's a one called the ASCAP Daily Brief, put out, as you might expect, by ASCAP.
ASCAP.
ASCAP, by a board member and a publisher and songwriter in his own right, a guy named Dean Kay. He puts this out practically on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, and he somehow accumulates all these really interesting things that you find out on the interweb, and he puts them all having to do with music and songwriting and the music business and some fun things from 50 years ago. It's like a really fun read every day. It's free, and you go to ascap.com, and somewhere in there it'll tell you how to subscribe to the daily brief, and it'll come in an email form every morning. You can read it over your coffee. We are in Nashville, home of country music. It'd be beneficial for you to be fairly up to date with what's going on in country music. I recommend the Billboard Country Update. It's edited by and created and written by a celebrated author, 40 years, Tom Rowland. Tom's great, and he covers the entire country music scene, and there's one weekly email that comes free. Again, you go to billboard.com, and there's something that says newsletters up in the corner. You click on that, and you subscribe, and it shows up. And it's about what went on last week, what's going on this week, what's going on next week, a little bit about charts, a lot of stories, little line items and blurbs, and it's really well done, and you can absorb what you need to know about the country music business in this one email. Then there is the Bible of the music industry that people have trouble with. That's the Lefsetz letter. Bob Lefsetz is a musicologist, and I say musicologist in as much as Bob knows more about the music business, the artists, and everything that's going on in this internet-centric world than anybody you know, because Bob reads incessantly, and he's on top of everything. Anything that's going on that's bothering you in culture, Bob is commenting on. You may not agree with what he has to say, but you cannot contest the facts that he delivers because they're all true. The beauty of it is, it's an email, but it's an email blast. So Bob sends you an email, you can respond and say, hey, Bob, you're nuts. Or, hey, Bob, I agree. Or, hey, Bob, yeah, I met da-da-da-da once too, and this is, and he'll print it. He'll come back, there'll be the mailbag, and even if you say something derogatory about him, if it's well written and your point's well taken, Bob will print it. He has tens of thousands of readers. Huge. He's been doing it for 40. I met Bob when I was back at Warner Brothers Records 40 years ago, when he was doing it on a mimeograph and sending it out in the mail. This letter, it's great. The last thing I want to recommend, if indeed you want to pursue a touring career or being in live performance, is the Bible of the touring business, which is Pollstar, Pollstar, Pollstar.com. It's been around for 30 or 40 years. Anything that's going on in live is in Pollstar. So it's a website, and you go to it for Pollstar.com, and there's all the articles and news and things that are going on, some of the charts or whatever. But if you pay for it, if you actually subscribe to the actual magazine itself, you get every show that occurred in anywhere in the globe last week is reported. And they can tell you the gross and what the tickets sold for and how many people showed up. If you're an agent or a manager or anything to do with touring, you want to be in on Pollstar. They also have great databases. It's the best music business database there is. It has lists of all the managers, all the venues, all the artists, all the agents, everything anybody has. They have their name, their number, and their email address and everything they represent. You have to pay for that. You have to buy into their thing to get all those databases. But again, and you as an artist for free can have your own entry in their databases. You can be a performer. They will list you, and you can list your dates, your upcoming dates and your past dates, and they'll list how to get in touch with you. And
it doesn't cost a thing.
No, that's free. And you get in touch, you go to Pollstar.com, and there'll be something there to show you how you can sign up and be entered into the Pollstar database. And I highly recommend it. If for no other reason, it has the appearance that you are a professional.
And we will include all of these links in the show notes, and including the books and the authors. So everybody, well, I will. I'll do it. Larry, thanks for being on the show.
Always a pleasure, Bob. Always a pleasure to come to your studio and enjoy the ambiance.
The ambiance.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
Stuck inside these four walls, sent inside forever, never seeing no one nice again, like you, Mama. Get out of here, gonna go back to work someday, maybe go to a sandy beach, get a haircut along the way. If I ever get out of here, if we ever get out of here. Said wash up everyone, for the germs on the run, germs on the run, germs on the run, germs on the run.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.